It's Friday, it's 5 p.m, and Bradley, I'm drinking, I'm about to drink an incredibly exciting beer. Do you know why?
Well, I think I can guess because we just did the little gooning thing
Just
where
did the
we
thumbnail.
hold the beers up.
Gooning.
But I
We
don't
did
know what
the goon.
gooning is. Isn't gooning something bad on the internet? We haven't been gooning together. That's
Everything's
sure.
something bad on the internet.
I feel like I shouldn't have said that. I feel like that's a wrong thing these days. But what I meant is we were sort of like doing a little face to camera for the thumbnail. That's what I meant.
If it is a bad thing, because it happened in the first 7 seconds, then the YouTube algorithm will let us know and demonetize us.
Oh, that's something to look forward to. I'm guessing
because of all the money we make in advertising off of 1,500 views of this podcast.
Exactly. I said you have already poured it, which I think gave the hint away, Jonny, that you may have brewed it. Look at that.
Here we go. Oh, I've covered up our lovely logo, but yeah. So I'm having a little snifter of a beer I prepared earlier. So this is nothing to do with Craft Beer Channel content. You'll be sad to hear, but it is essentially some friends of ours are having a big to do this weekend, and I said I brew a beer for it. So they love hazy IPA. Who doesn't? And so we designed a recipe with them. They love Motueka, so I made a Motueka. It's a Motueka Nectaron and Citra 4.9% hazy pale. But the first batch I wasn't fully happy with. I got a little bit of kind of booziness off of it, a bit of sort of a fennel character, which makes me think I stressed the yeast somehow. So I brewed a second batch. So this party is going to have 40 litres of this beer, because then once I'd kegged and tasted the original batch, I was like, actually, it's fine.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So now we have 2, but this is batch 2. This is the perfect batch, and it is... Oh, my God. It's so good. Like, there is so much limey citrusiness, and so much juice. It's verdant yeast as well with the Nectaron. It's probably the best, certainly the best hazy pale I've made. It is really quite magnificent.
What is it? A wedding, a birthday, a bar mitzvah?
It's actually, they got married last year, and they had a wedding in their garden, had the reception in their garden.
Yeah.
And it was such a big hit. They were just like, well, we'll just do it again. So there's no real excuse for it. I guess you could kind of claim their 1 year anniversary, but no, it's just they had great food, great entertainment. There's a DJ flying over from Spain. They've got a live band. There's a rival home brewer.
Oh dear. Okay.
Who's providing their Keezer and a coconut pale ale. I'm not so sure about that.
Coconut pale ale. Yeah, no, I'm not so sure about that either.
I think he just watched the Craft Beer Channel, and now I've just slagged off his recipe idea. It could be delicious, but it was a surprising thing to hear.
You're talking about people that get remarried every year, right? Potentially have a service
remarried
or ceremony.
Every year.
They're doing a celebration of their marriage from last year, right?
Sure, so kind of. Yeah.
This we had a bank holiday weekend here in the UK, and I didn't do anything because my cat Jeffrey was sick, and then Kirsty had a tooth implant, so I had to drive up through Notting Hill while the carnival was going on. Essentially, sort of skirted the outside of it to get her tooth done. And then the only sort of bit of fun I've had this week while monitoring my poorly girlfriend and my poorly cat Jeff was I watched Noel Edmunds' New Zealand adventure on ITV Player, right, Jonny? He has moved to New Zealand. I think it's a South Island. I can't quite remember. Looks idyllic. Looks Lord of the Rings-esque. But he gets remarried every year. He's been married, not every year, but he's been married 5 services, I think, 4 or 5 services to the same woman, his wife, who used to be his makeup artist. And they're both very much into crystal healing and activated water and all these other mad things. But also some
what's in boxes.
Yeah. All that. Well, exactly. Did you know, Jonny? Because I'd forgotten this. That he actually kind of went bankrupt, and all of his media empire imploded because the banks actually, the people that were managing his money stole his money.
I saw something about this, and he was suing.
Yeah, he got his
suing
money back.
someone. Yeah. Oh, he got his money back. Good for Noel.
Money back. Yeah, he got his money back. It was they went to jail. This is bankers going to jail. So there you go.
Did you? Firstly, I thought you were going to say that the banker had actually screwed him over from Deal or No Deal.
Well, technically, the banker did screw him over.
So yeah. Have I told this story on the podcast back when I was on Deal or No Deal?
No, but I think you've told me. But come on, please tell me because it's good.
Well, I was just going to say, so I went to see it being filmed as a student because that's the kind of mad stuff you did instead of going to lectures. And I got called out from the audience to speak to the banker because the person playing the game at that time was trying to win enough to send her daughter to university. Wow. And so Noel goes, anybody at university in the audience? And I put my hand up and he said, guy with a beard, had a weird goatee at the time.
Nice.
And yeah, up I went and I spoke to the banker and explained how much university cost. And then he based his offer off of that.
On your recommendation of how much
partly
costs.
on my, I mean, I think it was a stunt. I don't know how much I really affected anything, but yeah. Anyway, Noel, New Zealand.
Yeah. So he's got an estate. He's into healing. He at one point, I've watched the whole series now, Jonny. That was how boring my weekend was. At one point, he builds a giant stone circle on his estate, and he has to get the biggest crane in New Zealand to come and move the stones because they're that big that they get it from like a way hundreds of miles away to move these huge stones. But he also certainly has his own pub, which is called the Bugger Inn, and he challenges Jeremy Clarkson on the program to an international pub quiz stream where it would be Jezza's place against Noel's place.
I was thinking, even before you brought that up, I was like, it sounds like Noel's trying to do Clarkson's farm.
Kind of. And I was watching it thinking, it's a bit Clarkson's farm, this. But also, to be fair to him, he did move there in 2018 after he's got his money back. He was like, I'm off. See you later, guys. I've had enough. Oh, that's weird. So anyway, he went over there. He's got
for those listening to the podcast, Brad put his thumb up and something animated a thumb up on his screen. Just
yes,
it keeps happening. Sometimes in important meetings, Brad will manage to flash up some kind of anime thumbs up.
So he's got a pub called the Bugger Inn, and he's got a range of beers which he doesn't explain who's making the beer, but it's like an English pub, and he's got a full tap list. One of them is called Tits Up, and it's got it's like a Belgium beer, like logo of like a booby wench, which is
I didn't know this about Noel.
Yeah.
Is there's no Mr. Blobby references or
there is. So there's at one point I'm giving the whole series away. At one point, but it's a recommendation from Brad. If you're bored, go and give it a watch because he is entertaining and he looks incredible, right? So he's 75 and honestly, he looks about 60. He looks amazing.
What an endorsement. Okay.
Maybe younger. He's got a full head of hair. That might be fake. I don't know. His wife is a stylist, so she's styling it in this mad 80s frosty tipped. It looks the same as he did in the 80s, basically. But he's ripped, man. He's got he looks brilliant for his age.
Well, he's been lugging stones around.
Yeah, and he does this technique called, what is it called? Slow power or something. It's all quite weird, but he does like really slow stuff. And then he saunas and he does like the thing that James from BrewDog does with the hyperbaric chambers with like oxygen up his nose. And he does the cold water immersion tank thing, which he also does. So there's a longevity thing running through this, which is
it's
quite
nice
good.
If you've got the money and the time. You can live forever.
Yeah, exactly.
I ain't got time for hyperbaric. Actually, it's not really time so much that when you're asleep, but the money.
No.
I mean, I'm happy for Noel. I probably won't go to his pub if he's serving beer called Tits Up.
That was the worst one. I can't remember any of the other names. It was just that one stood out.
It should, yeah.
The pump clip.
In your mind.
But apart from that, there wasn't much un-PC stuff going on of note. I can't remember anything. And Mr. Blobby did turn up at one point. Noel was dressed as a wizard. I would say Gandalf, essentially, for a Halloween party. and they had loads of bikers turn up and stuff from the area. And then he chased Mr. Blobby around with a trident for some unknown reason. I'm not quite sure why.
Wow. You seem like the kind of man that will know this answer, right? If Mr. Blobby's putting in an appearance in New Zealand, is it the same man as would appear in the UK, or is it they just ship the suit over and it's a different person?
This was definitely a knockoff suit, Jonny. This wasn't the original
knockoff suit. Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh, well, do you know what? Like, I don't know if you know a lot about prosthetics and stuff from the movies and TV and whatnot. But,
why would I?
Well, of course. Why would you? I don't know if the Blobby suit was made of latex, but I have this sort of remembrance of it being like rubbery and like not flat. You know, like when you put some fancy dress, it doesn't keep the shape. This was like Teletubby level good.
In my head, it probably would have felt like a bit like soft play foam.
Yeah, and this one looked a bit too flappy, and it didn't keep its shape very well. And I don't know if this is just remembering fondly my youth, but I remember it being not realistic, but quite a good suit. And when
can it be realistic too? It's an entirely fictitious animal.
I don't know.
It's hyper realistic. It is. It's the original.
It is Blobby.
The OG Blobby.
I think Noel came up with Blobby. He said it made him an absolute fortune, so he loves it still.
You've got to wonder when he says he came up with it. It's not really a concept, is it? It's like it's a pink and yellow polka dot.
But it's such a big part of my childhood memory, like him getting like tackling people and stuff.
Yeah,
I think the man is a strange kind of genius, definitely. And you know, it's interesting when you see people that are absent from TV these days, and you're like, why isn't he on TV? It's because he's buggered off around the world, essentially, I would say. But I imagine he's a bit of a polarizing character, like an Alan Partridge, where he's like, we're going to do monkey tennis or whatever. This is what we're doing. This is the format. And like,
but of course, he's a real person.
He is a real person.
Yeah.
Or is he? Do we ever know the real Noel? I don't know. He seemed quite open, I would say, but also mental. He's mental. But it was very enjoyable, Jonny. So we've given him a massive shout out. Noel, if you're listening, you're not, but
pint of tits up on you, mate, after that shout out.
I'll have a couple of pints of tits up, and also, come to the Bugger Inn, which I couldn't quite. I was like, that's not quite a pun, is it? The Bugger Inn.
No, with Bugger Inn. No, I mean, whichever way you slice it, it's awful, but not funny. So I think somebody needs to have a word with him about the fact that he's 75 now and 18-year-old humour that doesn't work.
Well, he said he never wants to grow up. This is the thing. He's like a Michael Jackson. Well, actually, I shouldn't tell him Michael Jackson, but he's like a character that never wants to grow up. He never wants to be bored.
Just before we started recording this, we were talking about something about, it's like, I don't want to get sued. And then out he comes with Noel Edmunds is just like Michael Jackson.
That's
more litigious than what I was planning.
He wants to never grow up. That's what I meant.
Okay. Well, he's clearly having a crack at it, and fair play to you.
Yeah.
So obviously we have more important news to dig into, and I think we should start with all the people throwing beer in people's faces. I think that's pretty significant.
Okay.
So Brad sent me this video, which is hopefully the tail end of this mad viral hit that took over from the breweries putting cans on basketballs and then bouncing the basketballs and seeing if they could catch it and drink it, which every social media manager that had run out of content has now done. The new one is throwing a pint at people to see if they can guess what it is, which kind of worked in breweries. It was like, well, the beer's hopefully varied enough that you could possibly guess what the style is. But now it seems to have been co-opted by British pubs. Trying to tell the difference between Cruz Campo and Madry.
A Foster's Top or something,
Which is all impossible even if they're side by side. But Brad has, to be fair, found the most technically accomplished one.
Pretty good.
Which I'll put a link to in the show description for those listening in the audio version of this. But just take a look at this shot.
Throwing a beer at my manager's face to see if he can guess what it is. Heads up!
I'm still Shandy. remarkable palate if he's got that right.
Shandy.
I'm still shandy.
Shandy.
So yeah, what's that? That's a shot of like 20 meters, 25 meters, maybe.
That's an incredible shot, isn't it? Right? He kind of moved a little bit to embrace it, but
went back a bit, didn't he? Yeah.
Still, like that is a ridiculously good shot.
Social media content is hard, folks, and that just shows how ultimately pointless it also is.
I was trying to think about this. I was like, that sounds like it whacks with some real heft, doesn't it? I don't know. It's not reached its, terminal velocity or anything over that height and that distance and that drop, but it's gonna hit your face with some. It's gonna be like slapped in the face, isn't it? It's like a tango slap.
I would imagine, given that it's plastic, just to be clear to those who couldn't have seen that, not
plastic,
a pint, not a glass
not
one.
No glass.
He had a bit of cling film over the top to make sure that it arrived with some beer in it. But I would imagine as soon as it hits the head, that water comes out, which would have softened the blow somewhat.
Still, I reckon it's going to smart a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you'd want to repeat, I'd imagine.
Well, they have repeated it, Jonny. They have repeated it.
Oh, they have? What, from that height?
No. Well, they probably filmed that a few times. But what I meant is those same two characters, I sent you another video where they're just doing it straight out the pub. Straight out the front of the pub where he's just launching it at the guy's face.
Well, that's not going to cause any brain damage, though.
No. It's like a made in Chelsea date that's gone wrong.
Damaged in some way.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. So it was funny the first couple of times I saw it, But this is the mad thing about social media. I think we've talked about this on the podcast or maybe somewhere on the channel before, that yes, it gets clicks and it gets interaction, right? But beyond the first few people maybe that do it, there is no point doing this. You are not going to be attracting any new customers. You are not going to be creating long-term engagement or loyalty. And I really wish people would just put the tiniest fucking iota of thought into their social media, because this stuff with breweries has replaced any kind of educational, aspirational, interesting social media that could actually convert new people to beer, that could actually elevate the idea of craft beer in people's heads, that could actually sell products, that could make people that don't feel welcome in craft beer more welcome in it. Instead, our shop window is white guys throwing beer at each other. Like, what the fuck?
I'm gonna call it the jackassification of craft beer.
Yeah.
Social media.
I think it's a genuine issue we're battling right now. This idea that we think that making beer more mainstream is acting exactly like the adverts that inspired craft beer to exist in the first place, to get away from that stuff.
It's sort of regressing into a sort of lads, bit naughty, bit 90s, bit dangerous kind of culture, isn't it? A lot of this stuff. It's feeding a more primal kind of vibe, I think. That like you say, they're sort of trying to cut through to the wider thing outside of the bubble, and get people that maybe don't drink beer or don't drink in pubs, maybe because they're too young, Jonny. People that might find this funny might be about 15.
Yeah, and where's the Portman Group kicking off about this? Advertising to young kids like that. This is more likely to attract young kids than a beak label that's got the sun with a face on it. I think it's pretty irresponsible. And what you say about this jackassification, it goes back to what we talked about in our Big in 2025 video, in which we talked about, is this the year that craft beer goes boring? And in that regard, we were talking about brewers going back to classic, very middle of the range is a bit harsh, but easy drinking classic styles that would attract somebody, or not be a big leap from somebody who's used to drinking Bird or Carling, which I think is a completely legit business decision, and indeed I think quite an important thing for welcoming new people in. But then accompanying it with childish marketing not only excludes other people we should be attracting, but it also diminishes the fact that even if you are brewing just a classic, slightly hoppy golden ale, you should be elevating it, saying, but this is still a better product, still better thought through, still more flavorful, still a small company with real people behind it that will smile every time you buy a pint because that's going direct into their pocket. it's still a very different prospect, but by marketing it like this, we remove any difference between a craft golden ale and, say, AB InBev's Big Wave or even Budweiser. I think it's a pretty depressing state of affairs and a real sign of desperation.
Well,
but what a shot!
What a shot! I mean, that's coming from a pub, and we know how hard the economy is for pubs these days. So,
but are you more likely to drink in that pub? Now all I know about them is it's probably run by two toxic males who serve Amstel tops.
Oh, come on. They're a laugh. And they love Cruz Campo. The other one's Cruz Campo when he chucks the Cruz Campo in his face.
And at least that's a legit Spanish brand. At least it's not Landry.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I can't feel too bad because I'm like, they're just trying, aren't they? As a pub, they're trying to break through. It's like, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy that's gone viral. He's called Simon, and he works in a department store in Bexley Heath called Scopes Department Store, and he works in the suit section. And he's done this amazing video in a David Brent style, but it's him. He's not joking. It's actually his personality. He's walking around in like an ill-fitting suit, talking about the suits, 2 pieces and 3 pieces suits that Scopes has to offer in finest velvets. And he says, we have an array of fine shoesies, Jonny, not shoes, shoesies. And this is Scopes. I've never heard of Scopes in Bexley Heath. It's a department store apparently, but now I'm super invested in Simon, and it's blown up. I can see loads of famous people that I follow have liked Simon's upload from Scopes.
Don't get me wrong. That kind of stuff is great and can be powerful. What I'm talking about is everybody else copying it.
Yeah, I guess if the whatever the next thing that's like Scopes that's in the next town over did the same thing.
It's a carbon copy. And and that's where, because the people that originally came up with that idea, which is probably, it'll be a craft brewery somewhere in America. Well, from as far as I can tell, it will be, because that's where I saw it kick off. They would have been doing that with. They would have started as a serious thing. It would have started with, because there was another trend maybe earlier this year where they got people to blind pour. So could you pour a beer with your eyes closed and nail, the head and not overflow or underfill? Then they started doing, can you actually tell your own beers apart blind? So giving it to brewers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this
is the next logical progression of it. It's a joke. It's going, if I throw it in your face, can you tell, smart ass? And that is a legitimate, I think, funny thing to do. As satire of what came before. But as soon as you're not satirizing the original thing, as soon as you're just copying people throwing beer in people's faces, that's where it stops being clever marketing, stops being like this lad Simon, which is an original idea, and starts becoming, virality. And virality has an issue in that it just creates the same thing again and again and again and again and again.
Mind you, I wouldn't mind being at the centre of some virality. That'd be all right, wouldn't it? We need a Simon type team member. I guess I am the Simon, aren't I?
Yeah,
I'm the
let's
weirdo.
be real. We're crying out. We're crying out for some virality, but we're not going to do it by throwing beers in my face in place of me carefully tasting 20 UK IPAs.
The beer expert gets 20 beers
fucking drenched.
20 pints chucked at his face. That'd do well. I reckon that would actually do pretty good.
It would. I think half the world would like to see.
They'd be like, yeah, fucking chuck that at Johnny's face.
Yeah.
Ugh, and then the other half would be like, wow, he's actually great. He can lick that off of his mush, and he can discern the yeast.
I'll show you guys.
Yeah.
Do you know I know a guy that would love to see that. I got approached. I think it was at LCBF this year. A guy came up to me and he asked for a photo with me, which is not unheard of. And he said this is for my mate because he thinks you're a dick.
Oh,
And
nice.
so
Okay.
he asked me to put my middle finger up in the photo at the guy, and he wanted to then send it to his friend, and I guess imply that I thought he was not a very nice man either. So that
Did
guy
you
would
do
probably
it?
like to see 20 beers thrown in my face. But
Oh, you
that's the
did it.
first time
Good
that's
stuff.
ever happened.
Yeah.
Like, this guy hates
Yeah.
you. Can you send a picture to him?
That's
So
fine.
thanks to that person coming over.
Yeah.
Speaking of people who might be dicks, we've been avoiding the BrewDog news because we talk about BrewDog and Guinness too much on this podcast. But we've had enough BrewDog news come in the last couple of weeks that I feel like we have to address it.
Bullet points. Like, shuffle your papers like a newsreader and then rattle these bullet points out.
Wait, I got this letter from the CEO of Fortnum and Mason congratulating me on my award.
La-di-da.
What a flex! Oh, that's why people think I'm a dick. Actually, thinking about it. So I've shuffled my papers. So the first bit of news we had was an interview with the new CEO, who's replaced, I think, the guy from Specsavers, who decided that he should probably go back to Specsavers, I guess. Saying that he doesn't believe that BrewDog have a image problem, which is a remarkable statement to make, but I think also semi-accurate in that I think most people either don't know or don't care about the controversies around BrewDog's work practices and marketing approach. So I understood where he was coming from, but equally it has a desperate image problem within the industry. And for him to sort of try to concrete over that was kind of laughable. Which led us on to the next bit of news, which was that over the last 2 years, and the press were constantly presenting this as they've just been dropped by 2,000 pubs. No, it's over the last 2 years, 2,000 individual pubs have delisted BrewDog, which equates to, according to Drinks Business, a 52.3% drop in distribution.
Wow.
So that is huge. Particularly considering that BrewDog have always struggled in that regard. Most of their volume has come from Wetherspoons. Most of the independent free trade and most of the small pub chains have never stocked BrewDog. Probably not for ethical reasons, probably just because it's in all the Wetherspoons and it's in all the supermarkets. Who's really going into a pub and going, I haven't had for a while BrewDog Punk IPA. So this was big news and we ignored it because we were like, well, that makes sense. And then finally, the final nail in the coffin was news that broke just after our podcast went live last week. Thanks, world. Which is the fact that Martin Dickie has now resigned. So James resigned, I think we're pushing 2 years ago now, maybe, or maybe sometime last year. And now Martin has left. So the two founders and the two majority owners of BrewDog are no longer working their day-to-day, which on its own would be, not entirely surprising. Like, lots of breweries are in that situation, but more because they've retired. The owners have retired, but they want to maintain a stake. The fact that they've done it so young, like both of them are in their mid to late 40s, maybe. It's the fact that it's happened very, very quickly and against the backdrop of what I think is genuinely a crisis at BrewDog. And I think I've said on the podcast before that I wouldn't be surprised if BrewDog didn't exist in a couple of years. And this just makes it more and more likely that this is the case. That
sure does.
Its debts are so huge. It's only made a profit once in all the years it's existed. It has to finish this deal with TSG at some point. I'd imagine its equity for punks are now all pretty jaded about it and are starting to come to terms with the fact they'll probably never see their money back. And on top of that, they're being delisted. And on top of that, they're having to close all their bars.
10
so
bars,
where is that volume? 10 bars, was it? They closed in one go? Which I think accounts for, it's about, I think, to 15% of their estate. So 15% of their estate is closing. 50% of their distribution of their core beer has disappeared in the last 2 years. Their two major shareholders and I would say key personalities, and make no bones about it, Martin Dickie was a sensational head brewer for BrewDog. Whatever you think about BrewDog, and it was only recently the beer really started to degrade, and that was conscious choices, I think, as they not literally watered down the recipes, but, Punk IPA is not the beer that it was in 2019. That's a conscious choice to suit the market that they're entering. And I think that points to serious fucking trouble for that brewery. And I don't really see a way that they can recover, certainly in the independent trade. I don't see how they're going to get those 2,000 bars back. I really don't. They're going to become a brand entirely reliant on supermarkets, and we know how that ends for craft breweries. There aren't many that... I think there's two breweries that have made a success of that since BrewDog, and that's Northern Monk and Vocation. Otherwise, everybody else that tried it is closed.
I guess the sort of thing I equate to me is like when obviously we both worked for Jamie Oliver and his sort of restaurant empire imploded at a certain point. And that, that was really unfortunate, and it was maybe an overexpansion thing, whatever led to it. That obviously his whole thing is driven by his personality, his persona, in the same way that I think BrewDog was totally driven by Martin and James's kind of frisson together, their kind of joint thing that they used to do. I mean, they had like a bloody TV show, didn't they? They had such presence, such, like or hate the stunts that they did. And some of them were like pretty distasteful. But some of them were like, shocking and cut through stuff in a genuinely quite, sophisticated, dare I say it, punk way back in the day. It was genuinely quite exciting. And it raised the question, you can't stay punk forever, right? Like the whole point of being punk is you never have success. The punk sort of lifestyle,
being small and scrappy. Yeah.
Is you're always the underdog. You are fighting the big guys and you're sticking up for like the oppressed and your voice of the small man, not the small man, but the independent kind of thing that struggles against something bigger than itself. And when you become the big thing, how do you struggle against yourself? That's where it becomes like, the identity is just fooked, isn't it? Because the whole thing was like, we're two guys and a dog. We're going to like fucking change the world. And then when you actually sort of roll that out, because they were very successful rolling out into different markets around the world. Did they actually do the thing on the Vegas rooftop? I think they did, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they did.
Giant bars, that one that was underground at Waterloo Station, or was it Waterloo? I didn't go to it, but it had the like spiral sort of slide.
Which I don't think that closed. I think that's still...
Is that still there?
I think it still exists.
I mean,
but the thing is, this was all built on debt,
Yeah. Bad debt.
None of this was built on commercial success. It was built on a branding success, and
it's fake it till you make it, though, isn't it?
It is very much that, and it's also. So I think BrewDog's built themselves on debt, which I think was also the approach for Jamie Oliver's restaurants as well. It was expand, and worry about the profit later. And that was a whole model that BrewDog has tripped over that approach in many ways. The first one is, like you say, the branding only worked up to a certain size. At that point, you cannot be the punk disruptor brand. You are the established brand. And they're still trying to work out what that BrewDog looks like. And clearly it doesn't look like James, which is one of the reasons he must have gone. And I think that, there was a post which I nearly mentioned on the podcast a couple of months ago, maybe around about New Year, from Martin Dickie, a little bit after New Year. And it was a photo of like the original brew house in Fraserburgh, this tiny place. And it was looking back, it was saying, he's so proud of what he'd built and what he'd done. And just at the end, it said, whatever happens, I'm proud of this. So clearly this has been going on for a while. And anybody that follows him saw that, must have been like, well, something's going on, not just with James, but with Martin. So they've reached that point where they don't know what BrewDog is anymore. They've built it all on debt, and they've built it all on debt because they made a bet, which a lot of other breweries did, and this is a much wider point, that they bet that craft beer would win inverted commas the battle against macro beer, and it hasn't lost the battle. It's just that those that really got close to having that fight instead assimilated. They instead became part of that whole thing. And so this is why, and we've been talking about doing a video around the idea of, is craft done or something like this, but this is the situation that craft beer finds itself in. It's lacking identity. It's lacking new ideas. It's kind of lost the battle with the big guys. And it's having to mature in a way it didn't expect. And that has slowed everything down, which means that anybody built on debt is struggling to service those debts now. And it's coupled by, an incredibly traumatic couple of years in Europe and the Middle East and increasingly America, that's making things much, much harder. And if I had to bet whether BrewDog would still be here in 5 years, I'd bet against.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, potentially I would too, which, in a way does make me kind of sad. But then everything changes, doesn't it? Nothing can ever stay the same. I've got very good memories of drinking punk when it first came out and thinking it was great. In little dive bars in London and being genuinely excited by it and, the people behind it and thinking, well, they're wacky guys. These guys are crazy. Look at what they're doing up in a bloody, whatever they did, up in a helicopter, dropping stuff out of it, or like stuffing a friggin' squirrel with a beer bottle, which is obviously a bit gross, but
less than
making the strongest beer in the world. And all this.
They're the reasons the third and the 2/3 exist. They've fought numerous battles around around licensing, around the Portman Group. Although it turns out they sort of started that fight themselves anyway. But they were a cultural force, and we thought it was a good cultural force. Turns out it's a very mixed cultural force. And I will say, I think Martin's managed to stay out of the limelight a lot. He's always said, I do the brewing side, and James is everything else. That's why he was the captain and that kind of stuff. And I don't think that that's good enough in terms of excusing what's been going on. You're still a majority shareholder in a business, and you're responsible for the human resources side and the marketing side of that as well. But what he achieved as a brewer and a brewery is still remarkable, and so I think it's going to be a big loss for BrewDog when he goes. Well, he is gone.
Do you think? So this is an interesting question for you, Jonny. Is there a brewing future for Martin Dickie? Like, could he start up tomorrow or next year as something else, not BrewDog, and be amazing little guy? Could he get that punk energy back? Could they both come back together, Jonny, and
take down the monster they created?
Yeah, slay the dragon. We're slaying the dragon of BrewDog, and they're like, they're the plucky upstarts again.
Let's be real. James has swallowed. He's drunk the Kool-Aid, right? He is all out influencer millionaire.
Oh yeah,
hyperbolic chamber sleeping.
Yeah.
Elon Musk wannabe.
His flat does look amazing, to be honest. His flat in London, which he posts about, looks incredible. Like, the view looks redonkulous. And he does have the little the sort of ice bath thing going on. I saw he had Rory Sutherland around the other week to his flat doing something about his new project, that social tip thing. Rory was saying that he thought it was a good idea. So there you go.
Well, I mean, I like Rory.
I like Rory too.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. It would be very fun to see Martin start his own thing and maybe come out with. I'd love to hear the behind the scenes stories of BrewDog, and I'm fairly certain, even if it's not from Martin, at some point stuff will come out, because there must be obviously we know there are hundreds of disaffected ex BrewDog employees, rightly, but there hasn't been anybody from right at the tippy top yet. it's got to only be a matter of time before that happens.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, all of this stuff is about, as with the Jamie thing, is about people's lives, right? People that work at the BrewDog as a business, and they're losing their jobs, and or they've had traumatic kind of stuff happen at their job, which is not cool. So it's a very, very kind of personal, human story, as well as being tabloid sensational.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's, often the human element gets lost, and I hope that it's the human stories we hear when things start to come out. Speaking of human stories, so we've got another really interesting story, and it's something that we are currently trying to dig into deeper and see if there's a way that we can help, which is the Taipei Brewing Company, which is the oldest microbrewery in the Middle East. And as far as I'm aware, the only one in Palestine, has teamed up with BrewGooder, which is sort of a charity brewery that started, I think, providing for charities for Wales in Africa. They've teamed up, BrewGooder have teamed up with Taipei Brewing Company to brew a contract brewed beer over here to help raise funds for appeals throughout Gaza and the West Bank. And I mean, it's a really, wherever your politics lies in regards to this, there is a humanitarian crisis happening in Gaza at the moment, and anything we can raise is incredibly important to protect and help those people. So we're trying to back it. We're going to, what I'd love to do is a live show where we can get everybody to buy this beer. I think it's called Sun and Stone Lager. It's available in Co-op from the 10th of September, which is amazing. Fair play to Co-op. It's amazing news. And you can also buy it from the BrewGooder website. So we're going to buy some, and we're speaking to them about trying to get a live show or an interview together, even if it's just over the internet. Something we can do to try and make sure this beer sells in the millions of units and raise as much money as we possibly can for the people in Palestine. And also, I think, it's important to show that beer has the power to, not just unite people in going to the pub on Friday after work. It's about more than that. It is about, the ability it has to create community, to foster, genuine human feelings and humanity between different people. So I think that, while some people might hand wring at the idea of buying beer to support people, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And we'll be backing it in any way that we can. So whether that happens, whether it comes together or not, please do go out and buy Sun and Stone from the Co-op, or indeed from the BrewGooder website, and you'll be supporting lots of appeals around the humanitarian crisis throughout the West Bank, and indeed, of course, in Gaza. And I'll put the links to all of that in the show notes for this podcast.
Very good cause indeed.
Indeed. So this week's video, Bradley. This was back in Cape Town. That was episode 3 of the 4 episodes that I've put together for Cape Town, and slightly different to the first 2 in that it is a brewery profile, but I was brewing a collaboration. I mean, I have to say, when we do a collaboration, right? We dig into the recipe, we conceive in many ways the artwork as well as the recipe and everything. This one, very much less so. So this was an email conversation in which essentially Tinus presented a recipe to me, and having never made a Baltic Porter, let alone a red wine barrel-aged Baltic Porter, I was just kind of like,
sounds good.
Sounds about right. So we came up with the concept of the beer. Here we go, fireworks now Bradley's bringing up. This is bonkers. So collaboration in the loosest possible terms. But it was great fun. So he brewed a version months before I came, and then we brewed a second version, which I presume will be coming out of barrel around about now. So it was sort of a 7%-ish Baltic Porter, which we then paired with steak, Japanese sort of seasoned steak for a dinner for 150 people, which included, it was mostly brewers, beer judges, and then the 2 founders of Russian River. So pretty nerve-wracking thing for me to host.
No big deal, then.
So it was, when they I didn't know how many people were going to be coming when they showed me the venue. That was absolutely terrifying. But that went off without a hitch. I didn't manage to film much of it because I was very, very busy that evening. But it kind of tells the story of that brew, of that dinner, and then in between there is the story of Woodstock, which, it's quite a classic story of a craft brewery. If it weren't for the fact that for about 18 months there was prohibition in South Africa. So we got to dig into that a little bit. I think all the breweries that survived did some things that were definitely illegal to survive. Some off the book stuff, but we couldn't dig into that obviously because they would never admit to that. That's me, and they didn't say that to me. That's me. Reading between the lines, I should say. But it was genuinely, that brewery was genuinely a soup kitchen for a long time, which is just the most mad thing to think about. Like the cleaning, your pipes. I mean, I presume that it probably didn't go through any pipes, which is why he said they drilled holes in the floor, I guess dumped it into the vessels, and then, found one pipe for it to go through, and then probably threw that pipe away at the end of COVID. But I mean, it was one of the positives of COVID was stories like that all over the world. And it was great to hear that from Tinnis and Woodstock as well, because it was a big brewery, so they could do that. If the Banana Jam Cafe, Afro-Caribbean, or iGear had done that, they wouldn't have been able to serve a tenth, probably, of the soup that was being served at a Woodstock. So it was an amazing thing. And Tinnis was a super interesting character as well, like really good brewer. As far as I can tell, a great musician. So we talked briefly about the band that he was in before he settled down and started brewing. But he still does a lot of music, and straight after the dinner, he was off to play a gig somewhere in Stellenbosch, which is the student area near Cape Town. So yeah, another example of music and beer being so closely aligned. Music's loss is often beer's gain. Seems to be the Venn diagram is very, very crossed over. Did you see any comments that you enjoyed?
Yeah, there was one from Bremo Brews, says completely different vibes at each of the breweries in this series, but all very cool. South Africa seems to be brewers and owners just doing what fits their taste and interest instead of trying to brew what everyone else is brewing. Love it. And I think that, I didn't get to go. It looks amazing. That is kind of my take home, is they're all doing their own thing. They're not obsessed with just doing hazies or whatever. They all have their own unique personalities. And I think maybe the market isn't saturated over there to the point where it's hard to stand out as an individual, or in an area, you might be a sort of destination that people would head to. Whereas, other parts of the world, potentially, if stuff isn't clustered together, maybe you won't go to a tap room because you're like, well, I'll just buy the beer online or whatever. But these places look like, in the American tradition of amazing tap rooms, where you've got real destination places where great food offering, environments where there's maybe live music happening, and real sort of social places where things are exciting and the beer's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that it remains that way, because British craft beer was that way when it first started. You think about the diversity just that was in, say the Bermondsey Beer Mile. It had Anspach and Hobday making mostly historic classic English styles. You had the Colonel making amazing sort of West Coast IPA. You had Brew by Numbers, whose first core beer was a dry hop saison. There was so much individuality when craft beer started, and the commercial realities of it, really narrowed what was sort of possible. So I hope the South African market can sort of learn from the mistakes that were made in America and the UK, and can try and find a way to stick to their guns. Because, Woodstock probably has the most traditional craft outlook and portfolio and this kind of stuff. But even then, there was still a lot of cool things going on, a lot of experimental batches. There was a still in there. The food was great, and that was a big focus. They had live music going on. So yeah, it was a really individual market. I mean, obviously I picked 4 breweries that were very different as well, and was advised to pick those 4 as well, because they're seen as the 4 best in Cape Town. But yeah, I really hope that sticks around.
Having been there, do you think like I feel like we're at a point now in the UK where it's, you know, for people starting out that maybe want to start a business, the odds are like so stacked against a business working, or like having people having funding to like genuinely take a chance and you know, invest in a new business rather than working a 9 to 5, like opening a brewery or opening a you know, a bottle shop or something like that. It seems so difficult here. Do you think that it was maybe less difficult in South Africa, or is there more, because they're a little bit behind in their sort of, you know, you were saying maybe they're like 5 years back in terms of the scene's evolution. Is it at a point where, where you know, there's more, not that there's not optimism here, but there's less sort of things stacked against people? Like, are the, you know, the costs of municipal costs of electricity and water and stuff over there, are they closing businesses? Is essentially what I'm saying. Like, they might be over here.
Yeah. I mean, they have the same challenges.
Yeah, okay.
As we do, and they have worse challenges as well, because I think A, they can't get hold of the absolute best ingredients, although distributors are starting to see that opportunity. B, they culturally had a setback with prohibition, and I think that really hampered them. In terms of municipal costs, you know, startup costs are probably a little bit lower, but I think one of the biggest issues they have is finding a new market, because, you know, I didn't really dig into the film because I don't really into it in any of the films because I don't really know enough about this. But if I remember correctly, the unemployment rate in South Africa is 40%.
Oh, wow. Okay. Right.
So most people don't even think about the idea of purchasing a slightly nicer beer. That just doesn't even register in their daily lives. So there's such a financial restriction on, you know, the quality of life in South Africa that it's only ever going to be a tiny niche. And, you know, there's nothing a craft brewery can do about that. Other than, you know, hopefully being a source of employment and a source of revenue and a source of tourism, you know, just contributing as much as they can to the economy. So, you know, I think it's going to be a long time before craft beer as a culture in South Africa catches up. So it's going to have this incredible small scene, but in terms of how quickly it can move and grow, I think it's going to be hampered. But on the plus side, you know, you've got a customer base because of the wine and particularly the great food in the Cape area, that people understand craft beer a little bit more innately than maybe they would in some other markets. So, yeah, they've got the same challenges as us and some extras, but then equally they've also got some things that might help. So,
different opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll need slightly different approaches to what we had here. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it develops, and hopefully you and I can go back someday and explore it and see how it's changed. Right, that's all we've got time for this week's podcast. Next week will be the finale. The South African content. We're finishing at a brewery called Soul Barrel out in wine country. One of the most unique breweries I have ever been to in absolutely every single way. I'm editing it at the moment, and kind of, I'll be real, I was exceptionally hungover when I went to Soul Barrel. And I think I was a little bit disconnected from reality. And when I look back at what I filmed, I'm like, oh yeah, that is a pretty amazing place and a pretty incredible story, particularly the location where it's in. So very excited to show everybody that. The only other thing to say is that literally hours after this goes live, Brad and I will be supping pints, maybe halves, of False Azure, which is our collaboration we brewed last year with Pressure Drop. It's Double Pale Fire, which is one of the beers that got both me and Brad into the craft beer scene in London. And they've done another batch because they loved it. I think they've tweaked it a little bit, and we'll be there drinking halves, and there's a free half for anybody that wants to join us. So if you're remotely London based and you don't know what to do tonight, that's what you should be doing. Come join us at Pressure Drop Brewery from about 7ish, we think. So yeah, we'll see you next Wednesday. And of course, we'll be back here for a podcast next Friday. And until then, love and beer.
Love and beer.
Nailed those hearts coming out, Bradley. The Bubble and Friday 5pm podcasts are brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's craft beer channel. You can watch over 400 mini documentaries at youtube.com/the craft beer channel. And if you love what we do, support us via Patreon and get access to merchandise and our amazing Discord forum, a positive and welcoming space for everyone who loves beer, food and homebrewing. Love and beer.